I'll show you where I've made my home on the couch while preparing under lockdown, waiting for President Biden to tell me I can come out of my shell.
Out of the shadows.
The shadows betray you because they belong to me.
David?
I don't answer that name. Who's this David you speak of?
Bane,
Mr. Wayne.
You can take the mask off. Biden said, no mask off. You can go outside. What was the tweet specifically? Do you remember, Bane? Were you on Twitter this week? All right. The Biden tweet from the POTUS Twitter says, "The rule is now simple. Get vaccinated or wear a mask until you do. The choice is yours."
Oh, that's wonderful.
I guess that's not saying that you can take the mask off.
I thought I was wearing this mask because people fucked up my face. But apparently it was just because Biden told me I should be. Should I take it off now, or should I take it off after my second shot?
I guess that depends on one of two things. That depends on if, A, according to Biden, whether you're vaccinated or not, is whether you're allowed to. And then the second part that depends on is, B, why you give a shit what he does or does not allow you to do.
Well, I'm afraid to go back outside because I'm afraid the sun might be blinding.
Well, I wish.
Hold on, the particular valve that I smell out of is picking up some foul scents. Hold on. I'm gonna take it off now. Okay, is that fine?
Yeah, and when you come back, when you leave, bring David back in.
Okay. I'll prepare to bring justice.
So, David, come in.
What's going on, Bane?
Oh, it's your turn to talk now.
Thanks, Bane. Oh, hey, Dane. Have you already pressed the record button?
Wait, why'd you get, there was a hint of Australian in there when you said my name.
Oh, you didn't know that?
No.
Well, I just recently taken a trip to Australia because, as we all know, it doesn't exist. So
Gotcha. All right, well, I think now that we've established that you didn't, but Bane and I established that we don't really give a shit what President McTrippy Steps has to say about anything. I don't make it a habit of taking my orders from people that can't walk upstairs or form coherent sentences or, do 10 public speaking events in a row without saying something overtly racist.
Well,
I don't take orders from those kind of people.
I mean, I don't know if you know this, but I think this whole country was founded on the fact that they didn't want to be ruled by a king anymore and they wanted to make their own decisions. So we fought like this whole, it was a thing. It was like a whole war. It was this whole thing. We wrote this really important document. It's not important. You can Google it. But we wrote this whole thing that said we can make decisions for ourselves because we want to be free men. But now we're being told whether or not we can go out and get a tan because we got a shot in the arm. That's great.
I think I saw a story like that on Blue's Clues or something like that when I was growing up.
Right after they found that missing orange piece to the puzzle.
Yeah.
Then they said, oh, by the way, your freedoms are inherent to you. just in case you forgot. Old Steve.
This is definitely a shirt. We got to get copyright rules to put blue on a shirt and have Blue saying something just overtly civil
Blue
libertarian-ish.
Goes, and then Steve goes, oh, by the way, guys, in case you forgot. There's this whole constitution that says you're free. Anyway.
And everything the government touches, they royally screw up. So
can we run with that theme for this episode?
I think that would be prudent. So should we jump in?
Let's go.
And we go. Welcome to Weapons of Meme Destruction Podcast, episode 43, which can be found at wmdpodcast.com/43. You can find us on any podcast catcher. Just search Weapons of Meme Destruction. You can also find us on YouTube, searching the same. You can also find us on Twitter, Instagram, and TikTok.
By the way,
I think that's
the only reason Bane was still
Come say hi
here.
to us.
The only reason Bane was still here is because he crashed on my couch for the whole week. Like, because the last week's episode was about the Dark Knight Rising, and he's like, "Can I just chill? Can I just chill here for a little bit?"
He flew him in, but we could only put him up for half the week.
He's a bit of a refugee. He's working on some stuff right now, infrastructure wise. I don't know what he's up to, but he tells me it's going to be huge. It's going to be a big splash, so to speak.
If he ever really like gets on the warpath of fixing government, tell him to listen to podcast that episode 43. We're going to lay it out for him.
Sounds great.
All right.
I'll text him.
So I think the theme we're running with here is government screws everything up. And then it's not their fault for actually doing it.
This is like the first time we've ever said this before.
Yeah,
right?
I'm pretty sure this is a very, very new conclusion. I don't think we've ever come to this.
I don't think this whole podcast was ever started for this exact reason.
Yeah. So there are quite a few current events on this week's episode in the final season of the United States of America. And so we figured we'd give you another smorgasbord episode where we hit on 3 current event topics real quick, a little bit less in depth, a little more surface level, and get you the same length episode, but, trying to hit as many things as possible. So the 3 topics we're talking about in this episode are the pipeline hack and the resultant gas shortages. We're going to use AMC again, our baby Amy, as the gorillas have lovingly named her. She's growing up so fast this week, and we're so proud of it. But the Fed is still helping Wall Street cheat, and Amy can give us an example of how that happens. And then finally, topic 3 will be the higher rate of inflation than all of the experts predicted.
You probably never saw this coming.
The timing is quite worrisome on that one. So, jumping into the first topic, the pipeline hack and the resultant gas shortage. Dane, how is this government's fault? Private company, got hacked, paid a ransom, yada, yada, yada. Pipeline is allegedly now back on as of today, which is the, 13th? 14th.
14th by my
14th
count.
of May.
Let's keep going.
So, anyway, Dane, how's this government fault? Well, government kind of, with its regulatory restrictions, forced 45% of the entire oil supply for the eastern coast of the United States into one pipeline. That seems to be having a little too many eggs in one basket, if you ask me.
But Dane, this is the first time that the government's ever done that, right?
Oh yeah, no, they every time you're right. Every time before this, it's gone swimming.
It's definitely not like we had to kowtown to China because they were the only people manufacturing masks. It's definitely not like St. Fauci had to come out in the beginning of this whole pandemic and tell us not to wear masks because it couldn't help our safety because there was a problem and he was worried about the availability of the mask because we had, put all of the manufacturing of our country's masks in one country that might not have our best interests all the time. Or option B, just off the cuff. Like, I don't know if you knew, but Puerto Rico apparently creates like 95% of all the IVs that are used in hospitals. So when the hurricane hit, that level 5 finger of God hit Puerto Rico and decimated it, 5 years ago? They didn't cover it, but there was a worldwide IV shortage in hospitals. Because, the government always foresees, I don't want to put all my eggs in one basket. And this is the first time they've ever been bitten like this, ever.
I guess let's cut them some slack, David, because some lessons do have to be learned the hard way.
Sure.
At the end of the day, they are just humble public servants just trying to do their best, and dag-nabbit if human beings don't make mistakes, right?
All the time.
Right.
Usually when I make mistakes, it stains a shirt or, messes up a pair of pants.
Yeah. Doesn't disrupt the entire supply side of the supply-demand chain.
Correct.
For, several 100 million people.
Potato, 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 potato.
not several hundred million, but yeah, quite a few people. Now, anyway, that would be bad enough if we say, hey, you know what? Government made a mistake. They put nearly half the entire eastern seaboard's fuel supply into one pipeline. Who hasn't woken up late on a Monday morning? Am I right? Anyway, they were supposed to protect us from this, and part of their explicit reason for why they needed to basically wipe their ass with the Constitution and say that Fourth Amendment, we merely see that as a suggestion. We're going to take all these rights
These
to
are more
basically
like guidelines than actual rules.
We're gonna just completely throw that out the window. With the Patriot Act, we're going to spy on every citizen, regardless of innocence or guilt, and that's how we're going to stop.
But it's definitely for your safety. It's definitely for your safety. So this is like if you bought like your kid like one of those little inflatable like things for the pool that they put on their arms, but it turns out to be lead weights and just drags them down to the bottom. Like, all right, that was one time, but most of them are filled with air, not lead.
Yeah, so like even if we granted their premise and said, all right, you did that for our safety. Thanks, benevolent, public servants who never want to do anything bad ever. If that's not giving an inch and taking a mile in terms of what you actually ended up doing with it, I would say that we would want a modicum of what we were promised, right? Just a little protection.
Hindsight being 2020, we probably shouldn't have put lead weights in the child safety instruments. We see that now. We get it. We're definitely not going to do it, even though we started a whole new line of lead-weighted arm restraints.
David, have you seen the meme with the guy who's like going like this and like purple in the background, and on one side says, I get, you get? That's what this meme is. Like, he's the government. He's like, I get all of your Fourth Amendment rights to burn as kindling in my fireplace. You get absolutely nothing.
Fair trade. I'm glad we did business together.
Yeah.
It's been a business doing pleasure with you there, government.
Mimes, that's not your name just out of symbolism for the show. You need to go out and create that meme, because we don't just destroy them here, we replace them with better ones.
Yeah.
And then, if all of that weren't enough, if forcing the oil into one pipeline and then not protecting us with the power that you stole from us in the first place to do it.
Maybe just updating your
if all of that wasn't
spyware.
Bad enough.
Just maybe. Your antivirusware. Just press that update button. Just for fuck's sake, just press it once.
Damn it, David.
Give it 5 minutes.
Point?
It'll be fine.
Can I get to the last point? You took away any market mechanism for the market to correct it because you make price gouging illegal. Like, all right, let's set our emotions aside for 5 seconds, just 5 seconds, and just think about basic economics 101, supply and demand. If you have a supply shock, if all of a sudden overnight somebody snapped their fingers and, hacked the pipeline, and you have a supply shock and people figure that out, then you have more demand running at less and less supply. What are you going to get? You're going to get shortages. You're going to run out of gas. But if you allow people to set the price, because at the end of the day, a price is nothing but a signal in a market. It's a signal to show you how valuable is this based on how much we have and how many people want it. And if you let that value increase, you disincentivize people buying the hell out of it, so you drop the demand back down and you allow the supply to be conserved for, really important things. Important things that somebody's like, okay, I'm willing to pay $9 because I got to go to work today. Not I'm willing to fill up 45 gallons of it, because we're going to run out tomorrow. So that's how the market would naturally fix it if you let prices go where the market dictated. But even the government says, no, we completely created this situation, and this one thing that we have marginally less control over, we still have enough to make sure that it doesn't work properly. And then people are literally out of gas from this completely man-made crisis that lays completely at our feet. And we're going to turn around and say those people are stupid for filling up gas tanks.
If you're saying, guys, you just had to fill up your tank on Wednesday instead of Friday, what does that mean? What are you doing? It doesn't mean that much. Come on, you can't make a small sacrifice. Well, that's fine. But what does it mean overall? If a bunch of hackers got in and shut off the entire East Coast pipeline on a whim, what does that say for our national security? Which, by the way, we started off adhering to in this particular episode by what we can and can't do with our own lives, whether or not we can go outside without a mask on.
Yeah, it's a matter of national
These
security.
same people just let our national security kind of go by not pressing update on the Norton antivirus plug. It's like, no, we'll do that next week. It's cool. Well, all right, we'll be here. All I'm saying is it means more. So you don't start off the fight with a gigantic haymaker from hell. You start off the fight with a jab, and you see if it finds home, and then you work from there. So guess what? If you thought that this was just nothing, this does have major implications. But guess what? You won't hear that. Put your mask on, or don't, because you got vaccinated and got that little shot of mRNA in your arm.
Yeah, and I mean, here's the other thing about the market and the price gap. That's not to say that gas would go up from $3 to $9 overnight. Maybe it would, maybe it wouldn't. It would depend on how much supply there was in the region and how much demand there was. It would slowly rise, but the market would reach equilibrium where it hit a price to where people were willing to pay it, but not go overboard that they were filling up huge tanks in their car. So maybe that tops out at $4. Maybe it does top out at $9, but the market would find its equilibrium. And that's how, it regulates itself. So, a self-regulating market isn't this like libertarian, like fantasy land thing that this like sacred being that we believe in and can work magic tricks. We're saying, no, there's a reason why laws of economics are laws, because they always work the same way. This isn't theory. Supply and demand is not a theory. We know that's how it works. So when we base our policy decisions on how the world really works, that sounds a little less caricaturish, no? That sounds a little bit like maybe these guys aren't clowns and maybe they do have something legitimate to say in terms of what the best policy should be. But, that's not how the government works. David tied it in with, what COVID was. They had their experts and their policy advisors, and they set the rules, and everybody else was a science-hating denier who needed to be shut down and ignored or canceled. Same thing here. The policymakers that are, regulating half the pipeline supply into one pipeline for the East Coast that isn't even protecting us with what they stole from us, and that won't even let the market fix what they screwed up in the first place. These people are supposed to be the ones that rule your life, that know how to live your life better than you do. These are the people.
These people.
And speaking of these people, on this topic, everybody's mad.
Tiptoe around this one. This is a hell of a segue.
Everybody's mad at the hoarders, right?
Well, hoarding is kind of disgusting. Have you ever seen American hoarders? Like when they're finding dead cats and kittens and I can't throw out that newspaper from 1952. That I might want to read that someday. Like it smells like cat piss and death in here, madam. Maybe you haven't seen your fucking carpet in 40 years. Can we get rid of some of this shit? It's disgusting.
Can we talk about the hoarders that we're here to talk about?
Maybe.
But yeah, so first of all, not only is saying, look at these stupid hoarders, what are these people doing? It's not focusing on the real genesis of the problem. But even if we go with you so far as blaming the hoarders and calling them stupid or whatever, ask yourself a couple things. 95+% of these people, again, going based on how much of the American public is educated in public schools, go through the government's indoctrination camp, and the government has a hold on their education for anywhere from 12 to 16 years, depending on if they go through college. So in 12 to 16 years, the government wasn't able to teach these people basic principles of supply and demand, that if you all rush to the gas station at the same time, it doesn't matter if you have a fully functioning pipeline. It's not going to keep up with you all filling up at the same time.
And by the way,
I feel like if the market had control of educating these people for 12 to 16 years and these were the results we got, people would be up in arms.
Can we discuss this for a second?
Yeah.
Can we really discuss it? As a state that has to do this yearly, who are the first people that get to the gas stations? Is it the everyday Joe that works 9 to 5? Hell no. It's the retirees that get there. Well, I might want to make another trip to Costco this week. I don't know if I need 20,000 gallons of crude oil. Meanwhile, I can't get to my goddamn job on Tuesday because Ethel filled up her entire tanker that she hauled in with her U-Haul.
David, are you sticking with last week's episodes and declaring war on the boomers right
Yes. Pop out your dentures and bust in your fucking mouthpieces.
Hey.
It's time to
Language.
fisticuffs.
Grandma's going to be so disappointed. Language, sir.
I've only said it like 3 times. And are you, I'm sorry, are you censoring me on my own podcast?
No,
are you censoring me? Okay.
I just want
I'm
Grandma to
just
love
making
you
sure.
as much as she loves me.
Well, that's never going to happen. So I'm okay with that. I've come to terms with it. We'll move on from here.
Well, moving on from here, Grandma, we're going to call you after. We're going to figure this out after the episode. Next topic, if you remember, is the Federal Reserve bailing out Wall Street again. So
Wait,
when we say
that's happened before?
maybe once or twice, maybe.
Unprecedented.
Listen, I'll tell you, I'm willing to forgive a few things because since 1913, the Federal Reserve has been stellar. There's a couple slip-ups here and there, but overall, losing 95% of the purchasing power of your dollar is not that big of a deal.
It was unavoidable. It was gonna happen. Okay, guys? It's like Titanic. It was gonna happen. That iceberg was there, and what they don't tell you about that story is that iceberg hunted the Titanic down. That iceberg murdered the Titanic. Period.
And you bring up a good point with like, that's not that bad. Like, imagine if it were the opposite. We made this with the last point. Imagine if the market.
Imagine if the Titanic hit the iceberg and killed all the iceberg's family.
Whose fault would that be?
How about that? History.
Imagine the market had control over money and, say there was something like a gold standard that, dollars had to be backed by. So the government couldn't just turn on a printing press anytime it wanted. Just imagine that was the system we
Just
had.
imagine a system that like it was accredited and backed up by facts. Like your teacher handed you a test that you got a 67 on. I was like, no, I got a 100 on that. Like, no, you missed these questions. Like, nah, that's 100. Go ahead and put it in that little red ink.
And imagine coming from that system, people would say, oh my God, look at the failures in the market. We've lost 95% of the purchasing power of our dollar since we gave the market control. But again, the Fed is this sacrosanct institution that you shall not question. And don't come at me with it's a private bank. The Federal Reserve is appointed by the president. Its entire board of governors is appointed by the president. It is regulated to high heaven, and it does the government's bidding whenever it wants.
Hey, Dane,
when it needs
who prints the
keep interest
greenbacks?
rates down or whatever.
Who prints the greenbacks in our pocket?
Institution, or it's a private in name only.
Who prints the greenbacks in our pocket?
The Federal Reserve says it on top of the says Federal
interesting.
Reserve note.
Okay, so they can be held accountable for what happens to it after they print it.
Right.
Fair.
So that was a whole lot of lead up to topic 2 about how the Federal Reserve is bailing out Wall Street again. So, as you know, again, disclosing bias for first-time listeners, your illustrious co-hosts here are both apes in the gorilla gang of AMC. We are diamond handing this baby all the way to the moon.
One of us is Diddy Kong. One of us is actual, what's the donkey? Donkey Kong. Why do they name him Donkey Kong?
I don't know.
I'm sorry. Okay. That's a discussion for another day.
Yes,
Keep going.
So anyway, earlier this week, I believe Thursday, so that would have been yesterday, May 13th, there was a scheduled stress test for some of the bigger financial institutions on Wall Street, including some hedge funds that have some pretty highly leveraged short positions in stocks like AMC, GameStop, etc. Now, you're never going to believe that on the day of this scheduled stress test, the Federal Reserve gave $400 billion, that's almost $500 billion of liquidity to these institutions for David, you want to guess how long the term of this loan was for?
Should I over under it? Can I?
Yeah,
over under
like
it?
what do you know about loan terms like mortgage, car? Like how long do you think the
usually
term
that's
of this loan
expanded
was
over
for?
We
are talking about $500 billion.
Right. Like, I mean, you're gonna
need some time to pay that back,
a
right?
lot of the time.
Right.
A lot of the time, unless it's just kind of
So give me your guess.
A farce.
How long? How long do you think the term was?
I feel like I've read ahead in this chapter and I already know it. So I'm going to guess like to pay off $1 trillion. What? How long? I mean, how long did it take America to do that?
I don't know. Do you want to give me a guess?
We haven't done it yet. That was the whole fucking point. So, number 4. I'm sorry, Grandma. 1 year.
You know, I admire your hope and faith in the system. You sweet, sweet boy. It was for 1 day.
Wow! Holy crap! What kind
The
of
Federal Reserve gave a $500 billion loan to these institutions for 1 day on stress test
They
day.
must have reinvented the slap chop.
At what percent interest, David? 0%. So it's basically like, hey, Mr. Hedge Fund, who has way over leveraged position given how much liquidity he has and how big of a short position he has in this highly risky short play. Again, maybe our bias showing, maybe we think it's riskier than it is, but you know, AMC squeeze time, baby. The Fed says, no, we'll give you a big loan. So that way, when they come and look at your books tomorrow and it says, they have a whole lot of liquidity here. They don't seem to be a risk to me. They pass the stress test. And the very thing that is supposed to regulate the economy to protect the little guy is completely circumvented by the Fed.
There's no way the banks could have known that. There's no way the banks could have known that. It took our sleuthing to uncover this.
Unless the banks look to the Fed as, what is another name for the Fed? The lender of last resort. When even the banks fail, the Federal Reserve is the lender of last resort that pumps liquidity into them to protect them, to save them. That's exactly what they did in 2008. That's what the TARP bailouts were for. It was to protect the people that screwed you. And it was to protect their livelihoods and their institutions, not you. So when they turn around and do the exact same thing again, not only a moment later, in 2020, we barely are past TARP. Kids born then are now cognizant, barely. In 12 years, we're doing the exact same thing again at a grander scale.
By the way, these are the same people that are saying that crypto is the most ridiculous thing ever. It's like, okay. If that is the case, what's your basis? Like, you think that crypto is just created out of nothing? They're mining it. They're just writing code.
Shame on them.
What the hell did you just do? You just did the exact same thing. You print money willy-nilly. You give zero. I was going to say the F word again, but you don't care where the money goes or what happens to the value of the dollar. You just keep printing it like it's funny money, like it's monopoly money. And we have to absorb the inflation rates and the higher bills for basic necessities of our life, i.e. going back to the first topic, more money for fuel, more money for food, more money for everything, more money for living expenses, more money for water.
You are sharp jumping because inflation is 0.3.
Oh, I'm sorry. Well, what's inflation regulated by again?
The Fed.
Oh, fuck.
They set the federal funds rate, which
Jeez whiz. Well, we can trust them because they just completely devalued the market by playing funny money with our money. Again.
Yeah. So, just to close the loop on really how much of a complete farce of the alleged regulatory, apparatus of this whole regime, what these 1 day loans at 0% interest to pass a liquidity test does. If that doesn't exist, right, and a bunch of hedge funds failed their stress test, what would happen to them is the banks that loan them a bunch of money would see how risky they are, not the Federal Reserve, the lower level banks, lower than the Federal Reserve anyway, but not small banks by any means, JP Morgan, Goldman Sachs, big banks like that. They would say, hey, hedge fund, you have been playing too hard, too fast, and too loose.
Which is funny for them to say, seeing as they were the ones that were doing it in 2008.
We're going to margin call you. We're going to make sure that we are able to get enough liquidity out for when your eventually ass is handed to you on these short positions.
Goddamn knows we did it ourselves.
And margin call you, which means we're going to make you come with the liquidity. We're going to make you sell your value, your long-term stocks, your Johnson & Johnson, your Procter & Gamble's. We're going to make you sell those to raise the liquidity to pay us back on the bets that you lost on AMC GameStop. Now, would that be great for the economy as a whole? No. Are we jokers who just want to watch the world burn? Maybe, to be determined.
Well,
listen to some more
I would
episodes.
argue to the opposite.
But what would not happen is the ones that are making the bad bets would not be bailed out again at the expense of the retail investor who stands to make a little bit of money.
You mean
at the expense of people who've been cheating for it their whole lives?
I would argue to the contrary. If that means that Johnson & Johnson loses those stocks and loses that value, that makes it more affordable for the common man, i.e. the person probably holding AMC stock, to get those stocks once they've devalued a little bit, to buy in so they know it's going to go back up. It would restructure the market. In their hedgies' favor? No. But in the grand scheme of things, maybe. I don't know. But the whole point is that they're not playing fair again.
And so think about that in the context of what we said about price gouging in the pipeline example. Not saying that they're the same kind of thing, but just kind of running that thread through there about the market can fix itself. This isn't some fairy tale conception of the market. If you allow hedge funds to fail, imagine this concept. I know this is nuts and no responsible parent ever taught this kid to be responsible for your actions. If people make bad bets and hedge funds get liquidated, it sucks for the people that had their money in with that hedge fund. That is true. But guess what? Those people running those hedge funds are now out of the market. Their fund got liquidated. But now, what is the opposite being true? You let them cheat. They don't have any consequences for their actions. So are they ever really going to stop? And people, individual, normal people, the same ones that would have their money in hedge funds, the ones that didn't do it, those people would still be hurt. So you're not really making anything any better. You're just making sure that nothing ever gets fixed.
Dang, this is America in 2021. No one is responsible for their actions, but they're all responsible for their thought crimes. That's pretty much what it is. Yep. I'm not fat, I'm healthy. I'm not failing math. My teacher's a bad teacher. That's why my mom came in and told her that she's not doing her job properly and that I deserve an A. And that teacher will get fired if I don't get an A. That's where we live in now. I deserve a at-bat in Little League, even though I'm not very good at this game. And little Timmy over there is raking it, knocking 3 pims down all the way into the bleacher stands every time he goes to at-bat in little T-ball. But God damn it, I need my 3 at-bats to make sure that I know that I'm not good at this game. It's not my fault.
Sounds fair.
It's not my fault at all.
Sounds exactly the way exactly the direction we would want society to go.
Perfect.
If we wanted peace and harmony,
altruism,
and human flourishing, and all that good stuff.
Because when everyone's super, nobody is.
Which brings us to point 3.
Really? Did I?
Especially about people in government not being super.
Boy.
So David was was getting there on point 3, which was the inflation rate, what it was expected, what it really is, and what that means for the common man. So you may have heard that an inflation rate was recently released by the Federal Reserve in terms of the Consumer Price Index. And over the last 12 months, the Consumer Price Index had risen. Jeez, dang,
it's all right.
Talk.
It rode the rise.
Yes.
There you go.
Over the past 12 months, the all items index of the Consumer Price Index for all urban consumers increased 4.2% before seasonal adjustment. This is the largest 12-month increase since a 4.9%, so pretty close to 4.2, but a little higher, a 4.9% increase for the period ending September of 2008. Right smack dab in the middle of the last financial crisis.
And as we can all agree, since 2008, finances have only gotten exponentially better.
Yeah, I mean, college has gotten way cheaper. prices of goods and services have
We have flying cars.
skyrocketed.
We have flying cars now.
Yeah. We're allowed to ingest substances in our body without getting locked away in cages for 25 to life.
We have a general understanding that nonviolent crimes shouldn't be persecuted in the same avenue as violent crimes, right?
Yeah.
We're an altruistic society.
We are
that's
literally
just this
not
side of time
spending-
travel.
We are not spending about $1 trillion or maybe a hair less a year on, bombing people all over the world and maintaining the global empire. We got it pretty good compared to 10, 20 years ago.
Should we return to reality from this commercial break?
Yes.
Okay.
So, inflation, the recent inflation rate was 4.2%. We already told you about the timing and how it's kind of suspect. But the expected inflation rate was 2.3%.
But dang, we had to print that money because of COVID. We had to.
Listen, David, I know that. And they had to print the TARP bailouts, in October of 2008, not only less than a month later after the last inflation skyrocketed through the roof in 2008. A month later, they're like, hey, we're going to bail everybody out on Wall Street. And what did they do now? Hey, economy tank, we're going to give a whole bunch of subsidies to a bunch of businesses that don't need it, and we're going to throw some $1,200 scraps to the
We're going to buy your
to the
silence.
plebes.
We're going to buy your silence.
And what do we have to show for it?
We have Biden telling us
Skyrocketing
that we
inflation.
might be able to party if we get his recommended vaccine shot into our arm.
Oh my God. Don't even get me started.
Well, I think we're only like 25,000 minutes in, so
Yeah. I mean, and we've said it on previous episodes, and this is the last thing I wanted to say on the topic. I didn't know if you had more on it, but the one point I wanted to make is listen, it doesn't matter if you're liberal or conservative, Democrat or Republican. Whoever's running the show, you're going to get these same policy outcomes we've highlighted in this episode. So maybe don't trust any of them to run your life better than you. They're really terrible at it and have showed you a whole lot of times. But it's especially egregious when they go out of their way to say how much they are for the little guy, the common man, yada, yada, yada. And the first people that are going to get smacked in the face with inflation are going to be the poor and the middle class. The people whose the larger portion of their budget is spent on consumer goods than a rich person who has investments and stuff like that. They're going to get smacked when inflation hits. And so there's nothing any politician can say to say that their policies are about helping these people.
And again, we're not saying that you should or should not get the vaccine. Do what you want. It's your body. It's your freedom of choice. That's what our whole argument is about. However, when we're getting royally effed in the A, can I say that, Dane?
Yeah, you're good there.
Effed in the A?
That's acceptable.
I would expect a little bit more of a modicum afterwards than being told what I'm allowed to do after I follow the rules that they set forth that keep screwing me over in the long run.
Or maybe have a little empathy with the person who doesn't immediately fall in line and say, yeah, I trust that these people have my best interest in mind.
Yeah,
maybe.
just maybe.
Maybe that's a rational explanation for why somebody doesn't think something that you feel very strongly about should be imposed on everybody else by force.
So maybe a little understanding
Minor difference of opinion between you
is
and that
on
person.
the menu for the upcoming future.
So, if government sucks, why do you trust them? I think that's the takeaway that I wanted from this episode.
What's the definition of insanity again?
One.
One more time, just in case we forgot.
Yeah. Doing something over and over and over and expecting a different result.
That's exactly it. So what are we living in? A society or a madhouse at this point?
I mean, I'm probably going to go with the latter a little bit more than the former.
Yeah, me too.
I think it's still salvageable, though.
We started off pretty funny. We started off pretty light, and then we got really dark.
Are we funny at the end?
I hope you guys chuckled a bit.
Do you have I'm totally putting you on the spot, so feel free to tell me.
Any
no,
glass
I'm
half
an
full
asshole.
kind of shit?
No. Do you have any particularly cogent and on point Joker quotes for summing up the end of the show? I know this was very rude of me to do to you.
It's not about the money. It's about sending a message. It's not about that you screwed us over again. It's about us telling you that we're not dumb. We saw you do it to us in 2008. You're doing it to us, not even carry the 2, subtract the 13 years later. Like, what's the next one? 7 years later? Then 4, then 3, then every year? Like, when do we cut the cord? When do we stop saying, okay, yeah, you do what you want for our safety? Like, no, it seems like you guys have no concept of what's going on. So we're going to take it into the free market and you guys just hold on to the military for us.
And I say this with the utmost disrespect possible. Do you want the next thing I'm about ready to say to be a threat or a promise? And that is, do you want us to keep playing your game? Because we've played your game by your rules for as long as you've tried to make us do it. You told us to get educated and don't worry about the debt. You'll make it back with the high earning income. And you had
jobs.
An entire generation listened to you and did it. And now we're in no uncertain terms, for many of us, debt slavery.
Hey, Dan.
To your system that when we try to play it to just keep our head above water, you cheat and change the rules again.
When they're saying that they're creating jobs, are those like corporate hedge fund jobs for everybody to get that will easily pay off their college debt within, 2 years? Or are they more like, Amazon jobs that you're driving a truck for $15 an hour, which will barely pay off your student loans to get a 4-year degree in, 30 years, maybe, if you're lucky. All that time, you're trying to buy a house, raise a family, and do all the things that life is supposed to, the American dream. Are those which one of those jobs are they creating? They never say, they just said, we created a lot of jobs. Mm-hmm. Okay, that's awesome. So you built a couple more McDonald's so I can just work a toilless job that will never actually do anything for me whatsoever? Great.
Well, they'll show you, here's a prime example, and I'm going to forget the statistics, so I'll probably butcher it a little bit, but I'll put an article.
This is all caveat. This is not
to give you an example of what you were just talking about, like how many jobs did it create, but here's the other question. How many did it cost? And there was a projection last year, I think, by the Congressional Budget Office that said, we could completely transition X number of the grid over to green electricity, and that would create, 600,000 jobs. But that would cost 1 million jobs in terms of what's currently being done.
Well, damn.
Now, does that mean that all jobs are created equal? No, that's not what we're saying. We're saying if part of your argument is based on we created jobs, well, then you have to answer the follow-up question is, well, how many did you lose? It seems to be a rather obvious question.
This is just go off the grid again.
I thought we were done.
Conspiratorially. This will be the last thing that I want to put on here.
I'm just as guilty as you are.
Leave a little nugget in here. Just if you wanted to introduce a UBI, what better scenario would you have other than this? A forced mandate of shutdown to stay at home, and you get paid just to be you and live in a country. To be an obsolescent human and just get paid to exist. What's happening now that things are opening back up in restaurants and service industries? They can't find workers anymore because they're getting paid more to be unemployed than they would to actually be employed.
Yeah, and sorry.
Go ahead. No, I was done. I was done. That was the end of my point.
I was going to say, because I've seen that going around, especially as the long-term listeners know, I follow a lot of lefty pages, and they've been sharing this all over the place. If you can't pay more than unemployment wages, then maybe you shouldn't have a restaurant anyway, or maybe you shouldn't. It always goes on to the fault of the employer for why they can't pay whatever some nobody who's not even an employee or any way involved with the company on the outside looking in says that's not a fair quote unquote living wage. They always want to yell at the employer. They want to yell at the one person in the economy that looked at this person and said, you know what? I'm going to pay this person a wage. If they accept it, great. If not, great. But the one person who's willing to help this person out by giving them a wage at all, I didn't see you giving this person a wage. The employer did. They're the bad guy, but not the government, who, again, made $7.25 a worthless amount because they destroyed the value of the dollar. And then on the other side of it, destroyed it even more because they just print money like it's going out of style and hand to the fat cats that are politically connected anyway, not the little guy. So again, you have to focus on being mad at the right people or institution. If you're mad at the employer because they can only afford to pay a waiter or waitress $8 an hour and not the government who made that $8 worthless, like refocus. Focus, people. Focus.
Get to the top, work your way down.
And for you cheaters cheating at the top,
we're coming for you. If you
we're
think
just about ready to stop playing.
If you think we're bailing out at $20 after your little stunt on this week's little episode, I'm taking you to the moon.
I gotta say,
we're not going anywhere. We're not going anywhere.
Every day you screw around, my sell price goes up.
Yep. Period. You kick the can down the road. I'll be at the end of it eventually. And I'll be like, where's my $1 trillion, bitch?
Me and my minuscule amount of shares.
Which will amount to about $10 by then if the inflation rates keep going.
I'm a tumor. You can catch me early and root me out of there. But the longer I hold, the more diamond encrusted these hands
I'm going to take all of you with me. I'm going to take all of you. So Dane, where can we find this particular episode?
Yes. Listen, if you want to, what's the Joker quote, David? If you want to do what to the powerful that want to cheat?
Send a message?
I think how you would do that is you would share episode 43 as far and wide as you possibly can. Come to wmtpodcast.com/43. Send that link everywhere. Share us on.
What? I've got an idea. Have a listen party. Instead of a watch party, have a listen party.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, just sit down with a glass of wine or heroin. I don't know, whatever gets you off. And just listen to this episode and like take some notes and have a discussion afterwards.
And when you do, come and find us on any social media, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok.
We'd love to join you.
And write us a little message about how terrible
as long as you bring us our own hit of heroin.
Or fantastic.
Oh, I prefer Coke, but heroin's fine too.
And you can also find us on YouTube at Weapons of Meme Destruction, or not at, but just type in Weapons of Meme Destruction. Jump into those comments, like, subscribe, share, do all the stuff. You know how to love us. We love you back. But with that being said, we're signing out.
Have a good night, ladies and gentlemen.